Welcome to our posts. Today, we will see stories of r/malicious compliance. Force me to wear a dress. You won't like what you see. Hello, this happened 2 months ago, but I only thought of posting it now. Warning, it's a little long because I talk too much. First, a little context backstory. I am 19 years old man, am a severely closeted trans man FTM. I recently moved to the US from Africa. I will not specify where for safety reasons to study abroad. In reality, I moved in hopes of escaping the anti-LGBT laws and the sad reality of being queer in Africa. I hoped in America I could find a future where I could truly live as myself. Spoiler alert, I didn't. Not only does it seem like America hates trans people as much as Africa, but also, my family here seems to be 10 times more strict, closed-minded, and traditional than my family back home. For those who don't know, being an international student is expensive as heck. My family is not poor, but we are not covered in wealth either. So, to be able to live here, I needed to move in with my family in America, at least for the time being. Now, to the actual story. A year ago, my cousin graduated from community college and was going to transfer to another university to complete their degree. We are all taking this route because it's cheaper. Naturally, we all had to attend said graduation. And people from immigrant families can probably relate, but my family insisted on being well-dressed overdressed for the occasion. I hate dresses with all my heart. I have hated them for as long as I can remember, even long before I realized I was trans. I hate how I look. I hate how they make me feel, and it feels like I'm on the verge of a panic attack every time I'm forced to wear one, especially in public. You can probably tell where this is going. I was forced to wear one for the graduation. You cannot fight or talk back to your elders in my culture. No matter how old you are, I tried to protest as much as possible. But the decision was final. I genuinely wanted to unalive myself that day. Anyways, this year was my graduation, and I knew since last year that the same thing will proceed. My family will ask me what I have to wear for my graduation, and even if I had a perfectly nice suit that was appropriate for the occasion, they'll force me to go dress shopping and wear one to it. But this year, I came prepared. I didn't mention it earlier, but for over a year and a half now I've been on a weight loss and bodybuilding journey. In fact, the whole incident last year has made me double down and work out even harder. Losing weight and building muscle has been a way to help me manage my body dysphoria. Not only do I now look more masculine, but I look pretty cool with muscles too. Like said earlier, my family is very traditional, so they live by certain gender expectations. And one thing they absolutely hate is masculine girls and feminine boys. They hate muscular girls with a burning passion, saying it looks ugly or unnatural. So this year, when they brought up dress shopping for my graduation, I didn't even put up a fight. I went along like nothing was wrong. While dress shopping, I purposely picked the most tight-fitting dresses, sleeveless ones, and even unattractive ones. I've been able to hide my body progress this whole time by only wearing loose and baggy clothes around the house. So, when it came time to try on the dresses, and I came out of the dressing room, the pure look of disgust on their faces is one I cannot describe. I had to try so hard to not burst out laughing in the moment. While I am not the most muscular person out there, I still looked pretty buff in those dresses. Simply put, I looked like a man in those dresses. And they hated that ha. The worst part is that they could not even complain about my body, because my weight has always been an issue and talking point in my family. So, even though they hated how I looked, at least I lost weight, so they cannot complain. I was even considering lat spreading as I came out of the dressing room, but that might have pushed it too far. Anyway, long story short, they hated every single dress and allowed me to wear my suit, which I looked much better in. And now, even though I won, I constantly get comments about working out too much from them. On the bright side, since I graduated, I am finally moving out after summer. Hopefully, with more freedom and less fear, things will be different this time. TLDR, my traditional family forced me, a closeted trans man, to wear a dress for my graduation. But I became really buff over the year to look like a man in a dress. It worked and they hated it. Next story. Male staff must wear dress shoes or boots. The superintendent of my old school was comically rigid in his views and seemed to have his mindset stuck in the 1960s. He told us without a hint of irony that the only way students would respect us is if we were dressed professionally. Not even business casual was okay for him. Faculty wearing sneakers or blue jeans was a legitimate cause for termination under our contract. The male staff dress code demanded that we wear a long-sleeve button-up shirt with a tie, dress pants with a belt, and dress shoes or boots every day. There was, however, a note in our contract stating that the dress code could be reasonably relaxed, if not possible due to a medical condition. No details were provided beyond that. Well, my wife and I moved apartments one weekend, and my feet hurt. So I made the executive decision that that was a medical condition and wore my sneakers to school on Monday. I figured I could just lay low and keep my feet hidden from any pesky administrators, and I knew that my students wouldn't care. My students, in fact, thought it was awesome that part of my appearance was that of a real person. Lol. Wouldn't you know it? That was the day the superintendent and building administrators were coming around room by room to give the school board members a building tour. So of course I had to get up and greet them. Nobody said anything to me, but I did receive a nasty email from the assistant principal with CC to the principal and superintendent reminding me of the expectations set forth in the teacher dress code. No note in my file or anything, just a warning. Fair enough, I suppose, but it pissed me off that they didn't even ask why I decided to wear sneakers and just sent me a warning with no chance to defend myself. So, cue the malicious compliance. If you noticed from my post title, the dress code just said dress shoes and boots. Well, are you familiar with Demonia boots? I went ahead and bought the most over-the-top, bombastic pair of boots on their website. I'm talking black leather with 3 platforms, chains, studs, zippers, and straps galore. They came about halfway up my shins, and of course I tucked my pants into them. My students thought they were amazing, and there are pictures of my feet all over various social media sites. A few of my coworkers took it upon themselves to give me a stern warning, and some others gave me a high five. After 4 days of wearing these boots with no incident, the principal ended up behind me in the hallway. Rather quickly, he asked, "What the hell are those?" So I told him they were boots to ensure that I am in compliance with the dress code, and kept walking. That afternoon, I received an email from him stating that I was intentionally being unprofessional, and this would be documented in my record, and further dress code offenses could lead to disciplinary action or suspension. I immediately got in touch with my union, who quickly dealt with that in my favor, since they were indeed boots. I also explained to the union that I only did this because of the nasty email I received for wearing sneakers with my sore feet. The union rep immediately smirked, told me she was unfamiliar with that rule, and told me to go ahead and wear whatever footwear I wanted, and that if anybody had a problem, I could just claim I had sore feet. Long story short, I ended up wearing my sneakers every single day for the entire rest of the school year and never had another problem. My favorite part of this is that I inspired a few other rebels, and by the time I left that school, there were a solid 10 of us that were just routinely wearing sneakers or other non-dress code compliant footwear in blatant disregard of the dress code every single day. Good times, definitely a legacy that I left behind in that school. Next story. Only 1 set of keys for the hotel. I used to work at a hotel on a large property that did a lot of business conferences. We had golf buggies to get around, 10 different conference rooms plus lots of other hotel facilities, storage rooms, etc. Upper management had a strict rule that important locks could only have 1 set of keys. Upper management also liked to save money by never fixing things when they broke. It must have looked good on paper. One week we had a big spending client who had booked out the hotel for the week. Night 1, our sales team had got the times wrong for their dinner of several hundred people, so all available staff were sent over 2 hours early to start setting up. The hotel's general manager GM announced he would be over shortly to see how things were going, which was almost unheard of for him. What he found was about 20 staff standing around outside the venue. The conversation went something like this. GM, why is everyone standing around? Supervisor Sup, we don't have the keys. We sent a staff member looking for the other supervisor who has the keys now. GM, where are your other sets of keys? Sup, we've only been given the one set of keys. GM, why don't the staff have a radio on them? Sup, radios have been broken for over a year and never approved to be replaced. GM, why did you only send one staff member to look for them? Sup, we only have the one working golf buggy. GM grumbles and sends another staff member off on his buggy to look for the keys. Eventually, after everyone standing around for nearly 20 minutes, the keys turned up. The GM was stressed out of his mind that such a big client might be kept waiting. For the supervisor, it was just another Monday. Malicious compliance. The supervisor had access to a backup set of keys that they were strictly forbidden from using. Usually, in a situation like this, they would quietly use the forbidden keys and everything would go smoothly. But because the GM decided to be there, they didn't mention the forbidden keys, causing delays and panicking management. Fallout. The next week, each supervisor got their own set of keys. A few weeks later, we got radios for the department. Upper management also started checking in on how things were going from time to time. Apparently, making rules without knowing how things actually work isn't such a good policy. Next story. Okay, I'll do it your way. Back in the 2000s, I worked in a bank, and for 2 of those years, I was the head teller. As the head teller, I also had to keep up with the cash in the vault. Now, it is never a good look for a bank to run low on money, but it happens. With that being said, I would try to order so that I didn't have too much, but enough on hand to keep us from panicking. Now, on to the story. There was a system that would tell me at the end of the week how much money I should order and/or ship out. I will be honest with you, I went with my gut on this because 1, I knew my house, and 2, I paid attention to what kind of week it was going to be, that is holiday weekend, heavy payday, etc. So my bosses came to me to tell me that I was ordering too much and ignoring what the system said. My response, you can also see that I'm using whatever I'm ordering. I'm not just hoarding. So I was told, just do what the system says. Okay, bet. I gave my team the heads up. The next few weeks are going to suck. They're telling me that I'm ordering too much. So I'm going to do exactly what they told me to do. You can direct all of the bullshit to me. If people get mad, don't worry about it. I'll take the heat. So for 3 weeks, I did exactly as I was told. And what I thought was going to happen did. It got to the point where we're cashing large checks in $20s and barely able to do that. Apparently, the complaints started going uphill because the following conversation happened. Bosses were getting complaints about the branch not having enough big bills. Me, I figured that would happen. Bosses, we want to know why. Me, I'm doing exactly what I was told. Whatever the system is telling me to do, I'm doing. But y'all already knew that. Bosses, this can't keep happening. Me, it wasn't happening when I was ordering the way I needed to. So now you have a choice to make. Bosses, do what you need to do, for now, until we figure this out. Me, okay. I was pretty much left alone after that. As a side note, I actually reached out to that specific department to ask about a workaround so that I wouldn't have to keep having this conversation. The solution they gave was so simple, and I never had that issue again. Next story. I want it to look nice around here. I live in a very tenant-friendly area. We have rent control, and landlords are not allowed to do things like demand security deposits, enter the property without proper written notice, or include no pet clauses in leases, which renew automatically every month after a fixed term ends. For the last 11 years, my husband and I have had a great relationship with our landlord, Joe fake name. We've been very lenient in regards to repairs, and Joe was very forgiving when my husband and I both lost our jobs at the same time in 2016 and fell a few months behind on rent. We are now ahead on rent, but Joe is still very behind in maintenance and repairs. We have a whole laundry list of issues my landlord is aware of, but hasn't done anything about for years, but we didn't care because he left us alone and has been overall very kind to us. A few years ago, our landlord allowed us to start storing stuff in an old, run-down shed in behind our rented portion of the yard. We never stored anything valuable out there because it's falling apart, and squirrels have been using it to cache walnuts from the numerous walnut trees in our yard. We had an old BBQ, lawnmower, ladders, and outside toys for my kids in there. Until recently. A few months ago, Joe shows up asking about the shed, wanting to know what we had stored out there. I told him just some old junk we'll probably throw out soon. He told us that the family next door has a mouse problem we don't, and he wants us to clear out the shed to prevent issues, and because I want it to look nice around here. I said, okay, I'll talk to my husband and we'll get it cleared out whenever we get a chance. I have an infant at home, so I can't go out back and clean it out myself unless someone else is here to watch the baby. My husband had scheduled surgery, so he wasn't able to do any heavy lifting until after he recovered. Admittedly, cleaning out the old shed was not a high priority. Then, Joe sent me a passive-aggressive text. I just wanted to remind you that tomorrow is garbage day. We know garbage pickup has always been on Monday, and we need to work together to keep the rental property nice for everyone to enjoy. I replied asking him if he had plans to fix the shed, to remove his scrap pickup truck, or to remove his open compost piles and heaps of mixed concrete and scrap metal he has out by the shed he wants us to clean. I also explained that my husband just had surgery and that we weren't planning on cleaning the shed that day. Read it, he did not like that. He showed up unannounced, walked inside, and proceeded to yell at us in front of our kids. He complained about his personal finances and the economy, inflation, property taxes, swore at us about our effing crap, told us we can't use the shed anymore, and threatened to evict us because clearly you don't like living here, and I can get way more for this house than what you're paying now. We told him to leave and that we will not communicate with him anymore unless in writing. He said, "Fine, we'll do it all by the book from now on," and stormed out. The next day, he put an eviction notice in our mailbox complaining that we have excessive garbage and waste in outbuildings, that we refuse to discuss this issue and corrective action with the landlord, and even adding that he felt it was unreasonable given the fact that he didn't evict us for late rent back in 2016. The notice gives us 7 days to correct the issues, or else my landlord can file for an eviction hearing. The next day, while I cleaned out everything belonging to us, sans the walnuts and squirrel poop, from the shed, my husband got busy contacting local bylaw and the Rental Housing Enforcement Agency traffic cops for landlords. He was given information on how to file against the landlord for refusing to do repairs, illegal entry, loss of an amenity, the shed, and harassment. After a surprise inspection that happened last week, we were given a report that said Joe was given 90 days to fix the roof, plumbing, and weeping tile. He must demolish the shed and either erect a new shed or give us a rent reduction, because the shed was an assumed amenity. According to my neighbors with the mice issue, the provincial government is also involved now because apparently he filled in a pond without a permit. And now the fire department doesn't have a nearby water source in case of a fire, no hydrants out here. The city bylaw enforcement threatened to fine him for every day that he leaves his large pile of broken concrete and rebar out back. The cherry on top happened yesterday. He sent me a text to tell me that him and the plumber were going to be there within the hour. Normally, I'd be okay with short notice, despite the law saying he must provide 24-hour written notice. Not this time. I told him we need 24-hour notice. He showed up, knocked on the door, and when I reminded him that I won't speak to him in person anymore, He called the police saying that I was being hostile towards him, and he doesn't feel safe coming here. He sat outside for 4 hours waiting for the police, who later called me instead of showing up. The officer who called said that Joe was told to stop harassing us and that he needs to provide 24 hours notice to enter the home. He wanted to make sure Joe left and gave proper notice, and asked me if I wanted an officer there tomorrow to keep the peace. If Joe doesn't do the repairs he's supposed to, we plan to take him to court and file for a rent reduction, and for a lien to be put on the property so he can't just sell it. We're just doing it by the book from now on, and just want it to look nice. I hope you guys like this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share, and subscribe the channel. Our posts